Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a profoundly important internal landscape. We're talking about the neurodivergent experience of dysregulation and, absolutely crucial here, the incredible path to healing. If you, or maybe someone you love, navigates the world with AuDHD, that unique intersection of autism and ADHD, you probably know that the internal experience can sometimes feel like an exhausting tug of war, right? Your body wants one thing, your brain demands something completely different, and you are just caught right in the middle. So we're going to break down exactly why that systemic disconnect happens, why it's so prevalent in neurodivergence, and how we can actually restore harmony to the whole system.
Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're going to start by looking at the highly sensitive AuDHD system. Then we'll unpack dissociation and threat funnels, followed by dissonance and defensive personalities. After that, we'll talk about softening that internal split, and finally, the power of authentic choice. Section 1. The highly sensitive AuDHD system.
Let's start with a foundational truth that honestly gets lost way too often in clinical or even just everyday discussions. The AuDHD body is not fundamentally broken. In fact, it possesses this beautiful, natural flow state right from the very beginning. Every single system inside the body is naturally highly organized. It's meant to be flowing, receptive, sensory, and highly responsive to external input. Think of a child who can instantly sense a subtle mood shift in a room, or hear a frequency that everyone else just completely misses. That isn't a glitch. It's a flowing, receptive, and hyper-responsive internal intelligence system. As children, this means naturally responding much more intensely to certain stimuli, or really any disruptions in that organic flow state. This sensitivity is a remarkable, deeply valuable feature.
But here is the stark reality we have to validate, and it's captured perfectly in this quote from our source material. We live in a world which is designed to overwhelm it. When that innate, beautiful sensitivity isn't protected, nurtured, or supported by the surrounding environment, well, the system faces a crisis. To survive the constant barrage of an overwhelming environment, the body literally has no choice but to start forming unnatural internal defense systems. It's a brilliant but desperate survival tactic.
Section 2. Dissociation and threat funnels. So the crucial point is, this brings us to the exact moment the mind actually hijacks the body. Imagine the sheer speed of feeling a massive wave of sensory overwhelm and your brain just immediately slamming the emergency brake to stop you from feeling it. The source identifies this as structural dissociation. This is where the mind completely takes over. It actively replaces the body and brain's natural flow state and their organic signaling. It just starts dominating and dictating to the rest of the body. Because of this, your true self and your true feelings get actively hijacked by a set of rigid protective patterns that reinforce a massive split within you.
And this structural split shows up as what we call a threat funnel. Let's walk through the exact mechanism here. Step 1, an emotion rises, which immediately increases the body's state of alarm. Step 2, to prevent feeling that alarm, the brain just takes over. Step 3, a specific behavioral loop is repeated. And step 4, the underlying emotion is successfully and actively avoided. Let's ground this a bit. Say an overwhelming social demand arises. Okay, that's the alarm. The brain hijacks the system by triggering a rigid script of people-pleasing. That's the loop. Successfully avoiding the terrifying feeling of rejection. You literally get locked into these rigid behavioral loops every single time a certain emotion or experience is repeated.
Section 3. Dissonance and defensive personalities. Now, we really need to look at the extreme consequences of this repeated disconnect, and it is incredibly important to look at this with deep validation and absolutely zero shame, because we're about to see that masking, meltdowns, and chronic stress are simply the results of a distressed intelligence system. If this natural intelligence is disrupted and hijacked enough times in early childhood through constant overwhelm or trauma, it causes something called cognitive dissonance. In this specific context, it means the mind completely takes over and totally divorces from the body altogether. This absolute mental takeover creates a series of what the source calls personalities, but these aren't your true self. They are simple defense tactics designed for one single purpose: to try and avoid the body having to feel anything at all.
Just look at this devastating contrast. On one side, we have defense personalities. Because the goal is to feel literally nothing, that means sacrificing genuine joy, deep grief, and spontaneous creativity. It becomes a life of chronic dysregulation, stress, and overwhelm that is just shoved down by this rigid armor. But compare that to the natural intelligence system on the right, a rhythmic, healthy, and ever-developing flow state. The painful reality is that over time, we mistake this heavy armor for our actual skin, and these layered defenses become who we think we actually are.
But You absolutely cannot shove a naturally responsive system down forever. Eventually, as is necessary to actually restore health, the system starts to collapse into what many experience as severe autistic burnout. The body literally shouts. Suppressed emotions begin to violently erupt in meltdowns. The body and the brain end up actively fighting for dominance. The defensive behaviors fail because your body is desperately fighting to break the structural dissociation and restore its own authentic life.
Which leaves us at a critical narrative hinge with a massive question. How do we escape these prisons of personality? Take a second to really think about that. How do we get out of a trap that our own mind built to protect us? Well, let's pivot to the empowering, science-backed way out of the maze.
Section 4. Softening the internal split.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this is where the healing actually begins. We don't have to fight the system. Instead, we are going to learn how to gently ease it as we introduce the true power of the body-mind connection. Neuroscience actually measures this split by looking at heart rate variability. Look at the left side, a rigid heart rate variability. This means the nervous system is rigidly locked into those threat funnels, stuck in states of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But on the right, we have a flexible heart rate variability. A healthy nervous system and brain function is defined by this flexibility. It's when the unique expression of different nervous system states is recognized, supported, and able to dynamically cross-reference each other.
And this breaks down a huge misconception. Healing an AuDHD nervous system doesn't mean just flipping a switch between dysregulation and being perfectly calm. The goal isn't artificial stillness. The reality is that a healthy AuDHD state involves multiple states cross-referencing each other at various stages. It is a highly dynamic, flowing state, just like we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer. What a profound relief to know that healing doesn't mean forcing yourself to be perfectly still, right?
So how do we actually soften this split and lose that rigidity? Our source gives us clear, actionable steps. First, we must identify the underlying emotions that the threat funnels have been desperately dodging all these years. Second, we have to process those emotions deeply. And third, the most terrifying but absolutely vital step, we must let the body actually feel. It feels dangerous because the brain spent years building walls against it. But as we allow the body to feel those suppressed emotions, the rigid threat funnels start to soften until they dissolve entirely.
Section 5, the power of authentic choice.
And this brilliantly illustrates where the journey gets incredibly empowering for anyone supporting an ADHD child or adult or, navigating it themselves. These common struggles, defensive behavior, intense meltdowns, chronic overthinking, exhausting masking, or completely shutting down, they aren't fundamental flaws in your character. They are just the prisons of personality. They're the mind's outdated defense mechanisms that we are now softening and releasing.
Let's move to and see how this builds. By releasing those prisons, we can achieve our ultimate goal, deepening the connection between what a person consciously wants and what they are unconsciously choosing. When the mind and body are divorced in cognitive dissonance, your unconscious defenses basically make your choices for you. But by softening that split and letting the body feel again, we realign the conscious mind with the body's natural intelligence.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. By dissolving the structural split, we give the individual their choice back. So I have to ask you, what will you do when you get your choice back? Because once that internal tug of war ends, once your authentic choices are restored, and your body's beautiful, natural flow state is allowed to lead without fear, the whole game gets very, very exciting indeed. Just think about what you could build, create, and experience with all that freed up energy. Thank you so much for exploring this profound topic with me today.